All right, so I got some good news for y'all. Your sermon is going to be 10 minutes shorter this morning than what it was at 9 o'clock. So I promise you that. Thank you. I'm not sure if I should thank you or not. No, we had a little fire drill at the first service, so hopefully that doesn't happen again. One of the kids accidentally bumped into the alarm. And after 10 years of doing this, I was actually grateful that it's never happened before this point. So that was the first service. Hey, some of you have been asking about the book that I've written. We're going to get the final proof on Tuesday. I assume everything's going to look good, and we're just going to send it to the publisher at that point. So later this week, we're going to have an order form online at weomaha.com. Remember, all the proceeds, the first 1,000 books, all the proceeds forever, but the first 1,000 books, we have some donors that have actually bought the books as well. So, every book you buy, $15, the $15 will go to the building fund. So my goal is to raise $15,000 for the building fund with the sale of the book by the end of the year. They'll make great Christmas presents. I'm willing to sign any of them and all of them. I hope I have a really bad case of writer's cramp. Because it's a great resource. It's a collection of prayers that I've written over 8 years, and just can't wait for y'all to read it and to share it with your friends and family. And I think it's a great way to invite people to worship. Say, hey, my pastor wrote this. I'd love to have you come and worship with us. We had somebody that actually gave some money, and they wanted to have me give them to every family that had a baby. So I did a hospital visit yesterday to a new baby, and I said, we're going to let them go retroactive, so I'm just going to give them a book. And, any couples that I do weddings for, someone gave some money for that. We're going to try to give them to first-time guests as well, just to let them know that we care about them. So that's coming up, weomaha.com. They're going to be on Amazon as well. We don't make nearly as much as if they're on Amazon, but that's a way to do it as well, so you can do it that way. Now, if you're a guest with us this morning, I know there are because I've already talked to a few of you. One of the reasons why people don't like to come back to church is because they feel the church talks about money. So I'm not going to disappoint you this morning. I'm going to talk about money. Now, I talk about money usually 3 times in the fall. Usually I do it before summer starts, and I'll usually do another talk sometimes, late summer, early fall. Now, the reason I talk about money, for those of you who are new, is probably not what you think. The reason I talk about money is because Jesus talked about money more than he talked about everything else. The reason I talk about money is because we deal with money every day, and it's not just a financial issue, it's a spiritual issue. The reason I talk about money, the primary reason I talk about money is because God is generous. That is who God is. It's what God does. We've fallen away from that image. We're restored to that image when we get to practice generosity as well. And then I talk about money because I believe in resourcing the kingdom to do God's work in the world. So I want to let you know that I'm not a fundraiser, I'm a pastor. And when I talk about money this morning, those are the reasons that I talk about money. So last week, we discovered that we're blessed. Every one of us in this room is blessed. We discovered that we're rich. And we pledged at the end of the service last week that we're not going to trust in the creation. We're going to trust in the Creator. We're not going to trust in our riches, but we're going to trust in the one who richly provides. Now today we're going to look at the process of multiplication. So giving away our riches, giving away our blessings, it multiplies them, it shares them, and it returns greater blessings. Now I'm going to have a little bit of work to do to convince some of you of that, but I believe it. Giving away our blessings multiplies them, it shares them, and then it returns to us greater blessings. So who in here liked math class or likes math class? Any math people in here? So like addition. Now addition to our money, who's experienced addition in your life? Okay, so you've all experienced addition. I mean, I know you were a college student once, like living on ramen noodles, and you don't live on ramen noodles anymore. And so we've all experienced addition. What about subtraction? Anybody ever experienced that? Yeah, that one's not quite as fun, is it? We don't like subtraction. And multiplication, though, that's what I'm talking about this morning. Because when God talks about math with money, what God talks about is multiplication. So who is good at math? So someone raise their hand. Who's good at math? Can you help me out? You can help me out. So do you know multiplication yet? So what's 0 times 0? 0. What's 0 times 5? Okay. What's 0 times a million? Okay, what's 0? Okay, anybody. What's 0 times any number? Good, it's 0, right? So here's principle number 1. You can't save what you don't have. If you have 0, you can't save anything. You can't invest what you don't have. And you can't give what you don't have. Now, I want the kids especially to listen to me, okay? So if you're like college age or under, high school, middle school, elementary school, I want you to listen to me really close, and I'm going to hopefully save you a lot of pain in your life. Now I'm going to talk about 2 things. They're going to keep us away from that number 0. One of the things is simplicity, and the next thing is debt. Now one of these is a really good thing, simplicity. One of these is a really bad thing, debt. So I'm going to start with simplicity. Now, remember, you can't give what you can't have, what you don't have. You can't save what you don't have. Now, in the next, say, 45 to 50 days, you're going to get a lot of messages that have absolutely nothing to do with simplicity. So I want you just to give me like 3 minutes, and I'm going to make my case for simplicity. Did you guys get your Sunday paper this morning? It's kind of getting bigger, you know. Like next Sunday, do you know like that's like the paper boys like worst dream ever, because it's like the Sunday paper's like this big, and it's got an ad from any place that sells anything, and like we send our dog out to get the Sunday paper, and it's not going to be a problem for her because she weighs 160 pounds, and you know she can take any paper in. But like if you send your dog out to get the paper next Sunday, just make sure you got a good-sized dog, or go help the dog, because like there's going to be all these ads that say, you know, don't practice simplicity. You know, if you give her this ring, if you give her this necklace, she's going to think that you love her more. No, she's not going to think that you love her more. She's going to think you gave her a ring or a necklace. Like, how this works, if you want, like, how this works better is, like, listen to her. Like, can I just sit down and listen to you for a little bit and just like, you tell me whatever you want to tell me? I'd love to listen to you. I'd love to serve you. How can I make your day better? How can I make your week better? Like, the amount of the gifts that we give to our kids, to our spouses, to our friends, it has absolutely no correlation to how much we love them. It has 100% correlation on how much we spent on them. You know, that's the only correlation that exists. And I would say, like, if we all pledge this morning, like, okay, let's just make our Christmas a little bit simpler, I can guarantee you that your Christmas is going to be better. More complex and more stressful and more chaotic and more bills at the end of it isn't going to make it a better Christmas for you. What about when you say, okay, we're just going to say no to some of these, and all the kids are like, oh, so I'm not going to get my Xbox, huh? Thanks, Craig. That's the last time I'm going to listen to you for 4 minutes. But seriously, like, what if we carved time and just said, okay, we're going to be a family this Christmas? Or what if, you know, we made somebody like a really meaningful gift or wrote them a really meaningful note? Simplicity, like, the ads are going to try to convince you that newer and bigger and more complex is better. That's what they're going to try to say. And I'm going to tell you that such things are going to lead to stress and disappointment. Contentment, on the other hand, is going to lead to peace, and simplicity is going to lead to peace and contentment. Now, here's like the deal with wealth. Wealth is not having a lot of possessions. You know, that's just not what wealth is. True wealth is having very few wants. So let me tell you this: like, you can have a ton of wealth, like a ton of like stuff, but if you still have all these wants, you're not going to experience peace and contentment, and you're not going to be rich. Where you can have very few things. You can have even less wants. And you're not going to spend your life like craving and wanting, and you're going to be totally content and peaceful with what you have. You know, true wealth has nothing to do with the amount of possessions. True wealth has to do with the number of wants that we have. The less wants that we have, the wealthier we are. Now, I urge you to practice simplicity with your schedule, with your finances, with your relationships. The reason that we're so stressed out, the reason that we're tired, is because our lives are just too complex. Now, the next thing, and kids, if you live simply, I believe your life is going to be a lot more abundant and a lot more fruitful. And this thing, Dad, just don't go there. You can't save and you can't give what you don't have. Now, get out of debt, stay out of debt. One of the most, and students, I want you to listen to this one, okay? One of the most important skills you're going to learn in life is a concept called delayed gratification. That you're willing to save the money, you're willing to do the work, you're willing to practice the patience so we don't go into this thing called debt. Now, they're going to tell you that you can go out and you can buy this thing for the next 36 months, at a low interest rate. The worst financial decision that you can make is to buy an item that depreciates and pay interest on that item at the same time. That makes no sense, but we do it all the time. So what we're doing is we're paying interest on something that's decreasing in value. That's the way to get poor really quickly. Kids, they're going to start sending you credit card stuff when you're 18, 19 years old. Get a debit card. Don't go down that road. Practice delayed gratification, not instant gratification. So we're going to look at multiplication. Hopefully I've made the case for simplicity. I hope that we can leave here and say, okay, things are going to be a little bit more simple. They are too complex. I've tried to fill some of my heart's desires with stuff, and it's actually not stuff that's going to fill those desires, but it's the love of God, and it's the love of others, and it's service to people. And hopefully, today there's going to be some people that say no to debt. There's going to be some people that say, okay, daily, I'm going to keep taking the next step to get out of debt. So when I start to give, when I start to save, when I start to invest, that number's not zero, but it's something higher than zero. And then when that multiplication happens, God does this crazy thing. And here's the idea of God's arithmetic. So, I do a lot of weddings. Many of you have been to some of the weddings I've done. And one of the things I'll say at some of the weddings is that God's arithmetic is better than human arithmetic. So one of the things I'll say is okay, the two of you are here together today because you believe that you can become more together as a team than you could become separately as individuals. So God's arithmetic then in a marriage, and I believe this, God's arithmetic in a friendship, God's arithmetic in a healthy relationship is not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or even more. That's how God's math works. Now we're going to check and see what multiplication looks like, and this is where the really fun stuff in life happens. Let's go to verse 11 from Luke chapter 9. But the crowds found out where he was going. So the crowds were looking for Jesus at this point. This was a good thing. They knew that this man had been teaching all this stuff. They knew that he had been healing people. They had even heard a rumor that he had raised somebody from the dead. Now, if a guy like this is coming around, you want to find this person, right? So the crowds, they found out where he was going, and they followed him. He welcomed them, and he taught them about the kingdom of God, and he healed those who were sick. Now, verse 12, it continues. Late in the afternoon, the 12 disciples, they came to him and said, send the crowds away to the nearby villages and farms so they can find food and lodging for the night. There's nothing to eat here in this remote place. Now, already we have this dichotomy between who Jesus is and who the disciples are. What was Jesus doing? He was teaching and he was healing. That is what Jesus knew the people needed. Now the disciples are saying, gosh, you've been up there for a while, Jesus. We're hungry, and they're hungry, and we need to eat. I remember when Jesus said, humanity doesn't live on bread alone, but on the word of God, and he was teaching, and he was going to keep teaching. So then Jesus, I think he was annoyed here, and he says, okay, well, you feed them in verse 13. But we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. Or are you expecting us to go and buy enough food for the whole crowd? For there was almost 5,000 men there. Now, it's really interesting here. It says there was 5,000 men there. Jesus didn't feed 5,000 people. They only would have counted men in the Jewish culture. So we know that if there's 5,000 men, how many women do you think there are? It's not a trick question. I mean, it's like probably about 5,000. And if there's 5,000 men and women, how many kids do you think are there? Maybe about, 10,000? So there's about 20,000 people that Jesus is speaking to. Now, this would be the biggest crowd that he would have ever spoken to. There would be none that would be larger. So Jesus replied in verse 14, tell them to sit down in groups of about 50 each. So the people all sat down. Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looked up toward heaven and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread and the fish to the disciples so they could distribute to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted. Here's the multiplication. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. So with this story, we're going to have to put ourselves in the story to unpack what this means for us today. So let's say that you're one of the 12 disciples. You were there. Now, you've seen Jesus do all this healing. You've heard his teaching. You've seen him cast out demons, and you've seen his compassion. You've seen his grace. So you're in this town, and all these people are following Jesus, and you're trying to get the word out to get even more people there. So you get your social media team on it, and you tweet and you put on Instagram that this guy Jesus is going to be speaking, and you're trying to get all these people to show up. And most of the time, the church probably would have started 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So what do you do when you have a church service? How do you start it? You start it with some announcements. Got to keep the people informed, and you sing a few songs. So let's say it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden, Jesus is up there, and he starts teaching. 20,000 people, and this is the biggest audience he'll ever speak to. It's like Easter on steroids, and it's 11 o'clock, it's 12 o'clock, and he's still speaking. It's 1 o'clock. Now, how many of you would still be here if I was preaching at 1 o'clock today? I could do it, but I don't think many of you could do it. It's 2 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock, and he's still talking. You guys have missed the entire first NFL game today. You've missed this beautiful, gorgeous day because you're in here listening to me, and it's 4 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, and we know this is true because in verse 12, the Bible says it was late in the afternoon. Now, Jesus, he would have been speaking for a long time here. So if I talked, say, for a couple hours, and it's 1 o'clock, we would expect our leadership team to meet in the back of the room, right? It's okay, we got it. Craig, he's all right, but we got to shut him up. It's just beautiful out there. People aren't going to come back if he talks this long all the time. And we gotta hush him up. Anybody got any ideas? And what if Jesus, I don't know what he thinks about us, but he loves the people. So maybe we could tell him the people are hungry. Do you think that would work? Oh yeah, that'd work. So then all of a sudden there's 12 of them, and they're trying to figure out who's going to go interrupt Jesus and tell him the people are hungry. So let's just say it was Peter. Peter's the one that walked on water, and Peter, he's probably brave enough to go talk to Jesus. And let's just say that you're the one that was elected the spokesperson, okay? So all the people are there. You come from the elders' meeting in the back. You walk up, and Jesus, he's just talking away, and it's excuse me, Jesus, just 1 second. Now, your teachings today are absolutely phenomenal, all of them. Now, me and the other 11 disciples, we're just hanging on every word you say, we love it. But, we kind of hear, the people, they're getting a little hungry. And, maybe we could, dismiss worship so they could go eat, and we could go eat, and we could pray and hang out together. So, Jesus, you're concerned about the people. Oh, yeah, it's the people. It's not us. They're hungry. And, we could steal your feet all day, Jesus. And, so here's what Jesus said. We find this in verse 13. Go feed them. Excuse me? Go feed them. So have you ever been sent back to a committee or a group of people, and you've had to say some really bad news? That's what you would have to do here. You go back to the people, and you go back to your team of 11, the other disciples, and they said, what do you say? What do you say? What do you say? He told us to feed them. How are we going to feed them? Does he want us to go buy the stuff? How does this happen? There's 20,000 people here. So then what happened? This is really cool. This kid had went to Long John Silver's, and he he had a box, and like he even had this little hat. Now I couldn't wear the hat because it would mess up my hair because I put gel in it. But the kid didn't have gel on, so he had the little hat on as well. And like they said, "Hey kid, come over here. What do you got in that box?" So they opened up the box, and sure enough, there was 5 rolls and little 2 slices of fish in here. They said, "That's it." Well, tell him you take this back up to him. You say, you got this, and this is all the food we have, and we can't feed everybody, so he's going to have to dismiss them. So Peter or whoever goes back up there and excuse me, Lord. Hey, we did find some food. There's 2 fillets of fish and 5 rolls in here, but this isn't going to be enough for everybody. So do you want to just go and dismiss them? And Jesus said, no, that's fine. Just have them sit down in groups of 50. Excuse me? No, just have them sit in groups of 50. So to me, this is the miracle. Like, have you ever dealt with people before? like people. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? So the equivalent here is like you're standing like underneath the goalpost in the north end zone at Memorial Stadium, and you're looking up at about 20,000 people. They say, "Okay, guys, hey, we're going to feed you in a little bit. Just break into groups of 50, disperse yourself in those groups of 50 throughout the campus, and we're going to come around and feed you." Like, to me, that's a lot bigger miracle than like feeding 5,000 people. That they actually pulled this off, they did. So then, they would have had to remember the Old Testament story, though, of Elijah. And he had 12 loaves of bread, and he fed 100 people. So they're thinking to themselves, like, okay, Jesus is greater than Elijah. So therefore, like, he's just going to multiply all this stuff, and everyone's going to be fed. Like, it's going to be this amazing thing. Now, that's not actually what happened. We read in the Bible in verse 16, Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he looked up toward heaven and blessed them. Then, breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread and the fish to the disciples so that they could distribute it to the people. Now, here's the really cool part about this story. Like, there's a lot of cool parts about the story, and we'll talk about a few more of them. But the first thing that jumps off the page to me is that the miracle here did not happen in the hands of Jesus. The miracle happened in the hands of the people. So like they start off with a roll, all of a sudden like Jesus blesses it, he breaks it in half, and Peter, he thought, well, gosh, I have less now than what I started with, and I got to feed this 50 people and this 50 people, so he gives it to somebody, and well, take a little, no, not that much, I don't have that much to go around, but then like he just kept feeding the people, and listen to what the Bible said. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. It kept growing so they could distribute it to the people. They ate as much as they, look at verse 17. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. So the miracle didn't happen in the hands of Jesus. The miracle happens in the hands of the disciples. And there's hundreds of disciples that are here this morning. Now, one of the things I want you to think about is that, let's look at 17 again. They ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. Now here's one of the principles that we get through this. And it's true with me. I have never met in my life a person who has become poor through giving. I've never met that person. We're blessed when we give. It might be financial, it might be spiritual, it might be emotional, it might be relational. Let me give you, I'll just a couple months ago, some of our women had this idea that we were going to, bring in a family from another country that was a refugee. And I want to show you, what it looks like when we give. And I want you just to think about here the multiplication that's happened. I'm part of the Weak Owls ministry team, and we,
some of the activities we want to do during the year is, be connected, not only with each other, but within the Omaha area. And Kara had kind of come across this through Lutheran Family Services to set up an apartment for a family that was going to relocate to the United States.
Like, we got the list of things that they needed, and at first I thought, oh my gosh, I've bitten off more than we can chew. Just the way that people responded, just little things, or we got donations of money if they didn't have anything, or just like Tupperware or bowls, just everything like that. Too, yes, we've got beds, or yes, we had multiple TV offers. It was wonderful to see, like, just in the people that we're sitting with on Sunday too, that they have a heart for the same thing. So that was nice.
It truly does take a team of people. If you're doing a project like that, it really does take many people to accomplish what we did for that family.
On the second day of our apartment setup, I took my 6-year-old son James with us because he loves to help. And that afternoon, when we were at home, we were talking about what it meant to be a refugee. And I didn't know if he understood it until that night at bedtime. And he turned to me and he said, "Mom," he said, "we have enough." And I looked at him and I said, "What do you mean we have enough?" And he said, "Mom, we have so much stuff in our house, and that family is coming to Omaha and they have nothing." And he said, "I'm so happy I shared some of my toys with him." And it made me realize that, in just a small way, God was working in this refugee family's life, but God was also working in my family's life.
I believe that the Lord has blessed me greatly throughout my life, and it's a way to give back.
Not everybody has everything and has the opportunity to have everything, and I'm hoping that this family can come here and have a better life than where they relocated from.
So 3 weeks and 2 days ago, my son Benjamin and I, we picked this family up at the airport. They spoke as much English as we did Arabic. We loaded up their stuff. All their stuff was in 2 large suitcases and a little duffel bag and one other little carry-on thing. And they got in the car and we took them to their new house. Now, this is where the multiplication happened. We opened up the door to their house and they walked in, and they came from a region of the world that was war-torn, where every night they went to bed, just fearing about their safety, and they struggled each day to just make it as a person. And they lived in a camp of, many crowded people. I remember the little boy, he went and he played in his room for the first time. And it was just a simple little metal car, and he rolled it across the wood floor. They had some Ethiopian food that we had, brought in for them. They had a long journey from Lebanon to Frankfurt to Chicago to Omaha. But I remember when I left, I said, this is the multiplication. This man was so grateful. He hugged me and he wouldn't let go, and he kissed me on the neck, and the kids were just filled with joy. And every single woman, every family that donated, you're part of this multiplication. These boxes before me are multiplication. I have a friend every year. He sends the Waters. He doesn't even come here. He sends the church $10,000. Jenny, every time we get it, she says, "Hey, your friend just sent us the $10,000." And I asked him, I said, "Why do you give to our church? You don't go here." And he said, "Well, the reason I go to your church, Craig, is because I read your Facebook page. And if you were to talk to me today, you'd say, I know you got a team right now in Uganda. I want to be part of that. I want to be part of the group of people that sends your people and your medicine and your vitamins and your expertise over to help hundreds of people across the world. After church, you're going to take these bags, and we're using up these bags. These bags are 10 years old. We don't have any more left after this. This is a vintage collector's item. It has it back from when we were at Russell Middle School. Don't give this away to advertise who we are, because we have a new website and a new worship place. But on this side, there's this list, and take one of these on your way out. And what you'll do when you have your Thanksgiving meal is you'll know that you provided a meal for somebody else here in Omaha. And what you'll do is you will experience multiplication. The $30 or $40 or $50 that it costs to fill this bag is something that you'll get back many times, over and over. Now, two of the things about multiplication you have to know is it has to be blessed before it is multiplied. So what would have happened here if the disciples would have just went out and, gave the bread and the fish away without Jesus blessing it? Well, they would have ran out of food because it wasn't blessed. It has to be blessed before it's multiplied. Now, Jesus, he does the same thing with these fish and the loaves. And one of the cool things is it doesn't matter how big your gift is. They gave Jesus everything they had, and what they had was not nearly enough. But what Jesus can do is turn our little bit into a lot. He can multiply. The next thing with multiplication is it has to be given away before it's multiplied. What if they would have said, okay, well, I'm hungry right now. I'm going to eat this fish, and you can have that roll. What would have happened? They wouldn't have fed the 20,000 people. It has to be given away before it's multiplied. And, do you understand this? If you want multiplication in your life, if you want multiplication in your finances, if you want multiplication in your faith, we have to be willing to trust and to give it away. I think there's too many of us that are eating the bread and the fish that God is providing because we're worried that there's not going to be enough. And we wonder why we don't experience the multiplication in our life. We have probably a dozen families or so here at the Water's Edge that tithe. And what that means is they give a tenth of their income to the church. And I've pretty much talked to all these families, I think. There might be a few that I'm missing. And I have never once heard a story of regret. I've heard a lot of stories about faith, we didn't know if we could do it. We thought we'd give it a try, but we couldn't do it for a while. Then we tried, and we realized we could. And these are not monetary discussions that I have with people. These are spiritual discussions. People saying, God showed me that I could do it, and He's multiplied this, and I've never been wanting or needing anything else. Now, for me, I'm 46 years old. I've owned 4 cars in my life. You can do the math on that one. I've given the first 2 cars away. The third car, I didn't. In good conscience, I couldn't give it away. Some of you remember back in 2010, 2011, I had this old Infiniti with 230,000 miles on it. The lock on the driver's side didn't work. The trunk didn't work. The air conditioning didn't work. I would have felt guilty, so I sold it to the car dealer that sold me my car. I actually know him pretty well, and I sold it for $600, thinking that I was getting the good deal, and he actually multiplied that into $1,200 the next day when he sold it to somebody. But the multiplication, I remember the first one we gave away was just this girl. It would have been her first car. Friend of mine, they were trying to figure out how to scrape the money together. I said, I'm going to get a new car. I'm just going to give it to her. So I went and had it washed. I had it detailed. I filled up the car with gas. I sprayed some stuff in there to make it smell a little bit better. And it was multiplication. To see this girl get her first car. The second one, we gave it to a young woman who was in the church. She moved out to the East Coast. She didn't have reliable transportation. I was going to get a new car, so we gave that one away to her, our newer car. I've never owned a new car. And there was the multiplication that this girl was going to travel across the country in a car that was safe. It was worth it and then some. Here's how it works in the church. Next year, we need to increase our giving by 10%. Now, here's why. We're going to move into a building in early 2018. This is going to require more resources for us. There's new opportunities out there that we just have not had up to this point. So I want us just to think about the tens, and here's what the multiplication can look like for you. 10 is a really easy number to multiply. So if you've never given to the church before, what I want to encourage you to do is just say, okay, I'm going to try to save $10 a week so I can give $10 to the church. I'm going to participate in the multiplication. So if you've never done that before, I just encourage you to give it a try. See what it's like. $10 a week. Now on all these, if you try in January and February and you find out in March it's not working, then let us know. When you turn in your card, next week, we'll put that down. But let us know if you're going to change it back and just give it a try. Step out in faith. For some, it's going to be $10 a week. How can we do this? How can we pull it off? Let's do it. Now, if all of us did the next thing, we would have more than enough money for next year. If all of us increase our giving by 10%, then our budget would be fully funded for 2017. So if you give $1,000 this year, you give $1,100 next year. If you give $4,000 this year, you'd give like $4,400 to the budget next year. If you give $10,000 to the budget, you give $11,000. Like if all of us increase by 10%, then our budget will be fully funded for 2017. Now the last 10 I want to give you is what it would look like to become a tither. To join one of those dozen or so families and say, I am going to trust God with my finances. I'm at 2% now, and I can't make the jump to 10% this year, but I can go to 4%. I can go to 6% in 2018. I can go to 8% in 2019, and by the year 2020, I can be a tither. Just challenge yourself. Like, take what you have, give it to God, and trust in God for the multiplication. Now, next week, we're going to do our Commitment Sunday, and I want you to come back and bring your pledge card and challenge yourself. And like I said, if you try it for a few months and it's not working, I think that's a good thing because you tried. I want you to try. And this morning, we're going to end with the sacrament of communion. And I thought it was really interesting this morning as I was thinking about this. All the 12 disciples who were at the Last Supper, they would have been with Jesus when he took those 5 loaves of bread and raised them up and blessed them. They would have seen the miracle that happened that day. In fact, as they were feeding the people in groups of 50, they would have remembered what that looked like in their hands when they just kept feeding and there was always more than enough. So probably from that point forward, when Jesus took the bread and he lifted it up and he blessed it, they probably paid attention. So Jesus, he took the bread, he lifted it up, he broke it, and said, "Friends, this is my body that is given for you. When you eat of this, do so in remembrance of me." And what I want us to remember, remember those words Jesus says, take and eat and do this in remembrance of me. What I want you to remember is that Jesus multiplies. That there was a day that Jesus took a loaf of bread. He blessed it, and those loaves of bread fed 20,000 people. Later in the meal, Jesus, he gave thanks for the wine. He blessed it and said, "Friends, this is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been poured out for you in the forgiveness of your sin. When you drink of this, do so in remembrance of me." Now here Jesus offers us forgiveness. Now I know that there's some of you that have come here this morning and you have heavy hearts. Maybe someone hurt you, maybe you hurt somebody, maybe you're not being the person that you feel God is wanting you to be. Well, I want you to hear these words. This is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been given for you, not everybody else, that has been given for you and the forgiveness of your sins. When you drink this, do so in remembrance of me. So this is good news, that you can leave a different person than what you came because of God's grace and God's forgiveness. So let us pray.